Hey guys, Ben here. Today is the first in a series of Screencastify videos where I'll be looking at some more kind of visual posts and visual topics. So this will be the first in a series of kind of economics 101 entries. So where better place to start than with demand? And if we're talking about economics 101, it's all about supply and demand. And we might as well start with demand first. And I'll be going off basically a blog post I've written on Making of a Millionaire. So go follow me on Medium if you want to see all my stuff, and I'll post a link to this post in the description of the video. So first thing about demand is what are the factors that influence how much of a certain product or service that consumers want to consume? That's referred to as a quantity demanded. How much is demanded? There are a number of things that impact those type of things, but I'll go over some kind of high-level basic ones. The first is obviously personal preference. So if we were going to use the example, and I use it in the blog post, of coffee, if we're trying to look at what influences the demand for coffee. First of all, personal preference is the big one. If you don't like coffee, you're not going to have any demand for coffee if you hate it. If you're a tea drinker, but maybe you kind of like coffee, that might influence your demand for your quantity demanded for coffee somewhat. So, personal preference is the first place to start. And then the second thing is going to be your level of income. So that's the number two, right? So let's say you do love coffee, but you do need money to buy it. So if you don't have any money, you're not going to be able to buy any. So the more money you have, all other things being equal, the more of a certain quantity demanded you're going to have. You're going to want more of something if you can afford to get it. The third thing, of course, then related to that is price. And this is probably the one that kind of people think of most often in terms of what affects the demand for a certain product. So I use the example in the piece here that if the price of coffee doubled tomorrow, you'd probably be less likely to buy the same amount of coffee that you do right now. Or maybe you're just hopelessly addicted to coffee. And that we'll get into another topic later on in a future post about the elasticity of demand, as your kind of coffee addiction might relate into that. But all things equal, the higher the price, the less of something that you're going to buy of it. The third thing will be government intervention. So if the government came down and said, we've done some studies, we don't think that coffee is good for people, we don't want them to drink it, they could put on a caffeine tax onto coffee, and that would also impact the price of coffee, and hence your demand for coffee. So all of this is kind of summarized in the demand curve, and the big takeaway from your kind of high-level overview of the law of demand is that it states that if you hold all their factors constant, consumers will demand more of a good the lower the price. Seems pretty obvious. If they lower the price of something and you enjoy that product, you're probably going to buy more of it or be more likely to buy it at all. So let's look at the demand curve as we have right here. We'll take a look at kind of all of these factors we talked about above, price, level of income, personal preference, government intervention. All of these things can move, your quantity demanded up and down the demand curve. So if we look at the axis here on the horizontal axis, we have the quantity demanded, so the amount of coffee you would like. And on the vertical axis, we have the price of coffee. So generally speaking, this downward sloping line here illustrates that the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. This is the demand curve, saying generally, the lower the price, so the more we get towards the bottom of the vertical axis, the further along we're going to be on the horizontal axis, meaning we'll demand more of coffee. And all of these things can, factors we discussed before, can move you up and down the demand curve. So again, if the price of coffee reduces, so right here we have P1, that's the initial price. If they reduce that by say like 25%, the price of coffee, and that moves down to P2, we see the direct correlation here to the quantity demanded. So price drops, we move from Q1 to Q2. So as the price drops, we demand more of the product. That's pretty simple. there's also shifts in the demand curve can occur. And, essentially what would be something that might cause a shift in the demand curve? That would be the change of price for a substitute good. So let's say coffee and tea were basically perfect substitutes. If the price of tea doubled, what would that mean for the amount of demand for coffee? So in this example here, the demand curve is shifting to the right because the substitute for coffee, which is tea, the price has doubled. People are going to be looking for other ways to get their caffeine fix other than tea. So you might get a lot of tea drinkers saying, well, I'm going to buy coffee. So the demand for coffee will increase even if the price has not even changed. So that's represented here by the shift in demand from shifting to the right. And the opposite thing could happen as well. If the price of tea were to cut in half, you could see the opposite. In this case, then people would be looking to drink more tea and less coffee, and the demand curve would shift to the left. And at any given price, people would be wanting to consume less coffee than they did before. So that's it, a general overview of the demand curve, shifts or movements along the demand curve being caused by things of, personal preference, government intervention, the price, taxes, and shifts in the demand curve might be caused by, another external factor like the price of a substitute good. So stay tuned for these Economics 101 pieces. If you like these, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Follow me on Medium. You can check out all of my writing there, and we'll see you guys again next time.